Rude song. In the spring of the year doth propriety disappear in the courts and the ports of the bay. Drinking new beer, everyone feels queer, and the earls and the churls go astray. The bee and the bird don't have to tell us a word, our bodies for naughty are prime. If you haven't heard, you can let yourself be lured, for the youth, for things uncouth, it is time. Oh, it's lovely to sit in the field, harvested into rows. It's lovelier still to do the same not wearing any clothes. People of the bay bless the flowered court of Wayrest for showing us the gentle way of sin. The bonny dark elf queen likes to see and to be seen, with cobblers, thieves, and tavern keeps, and slaves and fish ermit, in the court of Lane Lynn, right upon the mainland, with sex the whole place is in a whirl. The Baroness likes to play with men who comes her way, while the Baron likes little boys and girls. Oh, it's lovely to give your lady a kiss upon her nose. It is lovelier still to do it the same with not wearing any clothes. In Daggerfall they hold a ball, and all of society indulges in a variety of scandal they can handle a lot. The captain of the guard has to search very hard for a bean that the queen has in her pants, and the court sorceress will grant you a wish to cause the king to fling about his lance. Oh, it's lovely to give your love a single perfect rose. It's lovelier still to do the same not wearing any clothes. Oh, it's lovely to abandon all your cares and fears and woes. It's lovelier still to do the same not wearing any clothes. Yes, sir, it is lovely not to wear any clothes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Rude Song. This Sage by Agrotheus Goth. Crackle, snap, hiss, flicker, bright, dim. The fire in the hearth provides light and heat. Neither seem to affect the old man. His reclining figure stares into the flames, and flames reflect back from his deep dark eyes. Indigo blue robes reflect and yet absorb the firelight, and highlights of golden threads twinkle as the flames flicker. His beard and hair are all long and snowy white. In the firelight, they almost appear to be ethereal-like, that of a godling. At his side is a tall pointed hat, which is the same color as his robe, and also twinkles with highlights of gold. The face is lined with age, yet almost appears youthful. Wisdom and intellect exude from his personage. This is the sage who is known in all of Tamriel as the champion and counselor to all users of magic. His thoughts wander, and he remembers. Gyron Vardengroet was born to a poor and humble Breton family in the village of Moongard. The only child of Frida and Horstel Vardengroet entered life during a rare eclipse of Tamriel's moons. It was soon apparent that he was unusually gifted in the magical arts, for he was found levitating the family's dog when he was only a year old. Most Bretons have a great talent for magic, but as he grew, Gyron displayed a talent far greater than any of that of his peers. The village wizard began to take an interest in young Gyron and soon took him under his wing. In spite of the young man's proclivities for being rowdy, the old wizard Grungdingler liked him and worked hard to teach him the magical arts to the extent of his own skills. Finally the day came when Grundingler could teach Gyron no more. The young mage had surpassed his master, and he was somewhat unsettled with the apprentice's mage questions about life, death, and immortality. Grundlinger called Gyron to him and gave him a letter addressed to Morkletter, the guild magister of the Mages Guild in Shornhelm. The young man told his parents of his fortune, packed his meager belongings, and set off for his journey to Shornhelm. After many months of travel through the foothills of Carillion Mountains, Gyron appeared at the gates of the great city-state of Shornhelm, high in the mountain terrains of High Rock. After the life of a quiet Breton village, Shornhelm was a wonder to Gyron. He explored the city from one end to the other, and eventually found the Mages Guild, presenting Grundingler's letter to Morkletter. Gyron was received warmly. Morkletter explained to Gyron that he would need to be tested before any commitment to further training could be made. After a night of rest and meditation, Gyron was shown the main hall of the Mages Guild, which was now filled with magic users of all kinds. It was very quiet. The young mage felt as if his heart was in his throat as he approached the Council of Three, the leader of the mages in this city-state. Morkletter rose and explained to Gyron the various tests he would be subjected to prove his worth as a mage. The youth then turned and left the council chamber, the eyes of many mages on him, and went forth to complete the task that had been defined for him. Returning to Shornhelm several years later, Gyron was admitted to the Mages Guild and shown to the council chambers, where he was met by Morkletter. The ancient mage reviewed the journal entries, the artifacts gathered, and most especially the spellbook entries presented to him by Gyron. An expression of amazement spread across the old wizard's face. There had never been a novice to accomplish what Gyron had during the testing. Morkletter then called a full session of the guild, presenting Gyron as a full wizard. Gyron remained with Morkletter for several years and studied hard. In private sessions several years after the testing, Morkletter admitted to Gyron that the Guild of Shornhelm could teach him no more, and that he should seek further enlightenment at the Crystal Tower on Somerset Isle. After packing his possessions once again, Gyron set off for another long journey. He arrived at the Crystal Tower several years later, after having traversed the province of Hammerfell, where he had many adventures, met many other mages, and shared his experiences and knowledge with them. He had heard stories of wonderful plants that, when combined with other elements, could restore life to those dead, prolong life to those yet living, and in the proper combinations bestow immortality on the user. Gyron was also quick to advise and guide mages who were less experienced than himself. He loved being able to help. He made many friends, and stories began to spread across the land about his exceptional use of magic. When he entered the Crystal Tower, he was greeted by several mages, all clamoring for his attention. His reputation had preceded him. However, the crowd hushed and parted at the arrival of the very imposing figure, dressed all in indigo, blue robes trimmed with gold, wearing a high-pointed hat, and carrying the most beautifully carved staff Gyron had ever seen. The elder of the Council of Wizards, Estlander, looked closely at the young wizard, nodded, and turned to walk back to the tower. Without delay, Gyron followed him. The audience that followed stunned the young mage. Estlander explained to him that Gyron's coming had been foretold for many years, and he had been expected. The mages had been told by the gods that one of their own would come to provide guidance, knowledge, and aid. Gyron was that promised champion and leader. Gyron was confused and uncertain. How could he be such an extraordinary person? What must he do to fulfill his destiny? Many questions spilled from him, to which Estlander could not explain the answers. The elder suggested that Gyron stay with them in the Crystal Tower for a while and study. This he did. The day finally came when the elder admitted to Gyron that the Crystal Tower could no longer provide anything new that he needed to travel the lands of Tamriel and seek the wisdom and knowledge. The elder sighed and told Gyron how sad he was that the Crystal Tower was losing him, but that his destiny must be fulfilled. With this, the elder presented Gyron with a package wrapped in the same beautiful indigo blue as the elder's robe. Gyron was told to take the package with him, but open it only when he was at least a day's travel from the Crystal Tower. After a long day's walk, Gyron set up camp in a beautiful glade next to a brook of crystal clear water. Finally, he thought, I can open the elder's package. As he untied the golden cord that had bound the package, he found that the wrapping was not wrapping at all, but an exquisitely tailored robe identical to the one worn by the elder. As he opened the robe, a high-pointed wizard's hat popped out of the package, and with it a whoosh and pop. The same intricately carved staff that the elder had carried appeared. A note from the elder advised that the garments were indestructible, and that the staff had many magical properties for Gyron to discover. It went on further to explain that from this day forward, Gyron would be known as the Sage. Tired from his walking, and with an inner glow of accomplishment, the sage settled down for the first night of his long pilgrimage across the lands. After many months of further travels and adventure, the sage returned to Moongard and was warmly welcomed by the villagers and most especially his parents, Frida and Horstel. News of his coming had preceded him, and the whole village had worked hard to build a furnish a cottage for the mage in the pleasant forest just outside the town. After a festive banquet that evening, Gyron retired to his new home. The sage settled into his life outside Moongard. He received many visitors who had traveled from near and far to seek his guidance, help, and training. The years passed. It was not long before first Herstyle and then Frida died. The sage was devastated by his loss. In his grief, he swore to dedicate to restore his life to defending death so that grief like this could be avoided by others. He returned to the great library at the Crystal Tower and researched many flowers, herbs, and plants that he had heard about and seen during his travels. In his cottage, he labored tirelessly over the spellbooks, vials, and collection of flora from all over the lands. He tested the potions on himself. The years went by, but the sage seemed not to age any more. At some point, he had found the right combination in his experiments, but could not determine which combination it had been, as the change had been most subtle. He had been secured a life without end, and the years continued to pass. Mages came to him for help, which he freely gave. The sage settled into his life of advising and guiding, and the years continued to pass. Unfortunately, his fame became so great that the call for his help was unmanageable. He reluctantly packed his possessions for the last time and moved into the Carillion Mountains and built a magical fortress. Only the most worthy magic user could gain access and help from the sage. However, following his heart, even today, the sage often leaves his mountain's abode and travels the land, helping young mages gain experience and to grow. Snap, crackle. The firelight flickers. The old mage stirs as the memories fade and flicker like the firelight. Bang, bang, bang. Echoes from the pounding knocker on the great oaken doors of the fortress. The sage rises and heads for the doors, knowing that yet another mage in need has found him and is worthy of help. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the sage. And apparently this story is going to continue in Bayfolken and the final lesson. And I did look up where they are, and those books will be in Morrowind, so we will get back to this story in Morrowind. But for now, there's one more book in this episode, so I'll be back in just a minute. The Story of Lyrisius by Brasine Smythe. In ancient times there lived a hero named Lyrisius. He fought against the Akaviri slave traders and single-handedly slew hundreds. Despite his valor, Lyrisius' army was routed and scattered to the four winds. Lyrisius fled into the moors to escape the Akaviri chariots. Far from the lands of men, Lyrisius entered the blasted lands at the heart of this forsaken landscape. He met the worm. The great scaly beast mocked the mighty blows of Lyrisius' enchanted spear, and melted the shield fear-struck gift of the Daedra Boethia with a single blast of its fiery breath. Lyrisius, seeing that he could not defeat the creature by force of arms, surrendered. The worm intended to devour Lyrisius when the hero offered to be its slave and manservant. Ever prideful, the worm agreed. Seeing that the worm was vulnerable to conceit, Lyrisius spoke, "O great worm, for my first service I beg that you allow me to polish your one tarnished scale." Indeed, centered between the great wings of the creature was a dull scale, clearly out of reach of its long neck. Its vanity was such that it immediately lowered one wing for Lyrisius to climb upon. Once astride the great lizard, Lyrisius slid his dagger under the scale and into the tender flesh of the beast. Though it spun and twisted in all directions, the worm could not get at the hero. Finally it took to the air. Lyrisius clung to its neck, and with all his strength, and the worm banked and rolled and dove. Seeing that Lyrisius could not be shaken free, the worm demanded that he remove the stinging blade. Lyrisius answered, "Fly straight on until you see a great army. Destroy that army, and I will remove my blade." With a great roar, the scaled creature set off. The Akaviri army had no chance against the fire-breathing beast. They never plagued Tamriel since. "I have done as you bid. Now sheath your stinger," roared the worm. Knowing that he would be devoured or worse, Lyrisius pulled the blade and then leapt from the back of the flying worm. Indeed, the foul monster had intended to slay the hero. The worm pursued the plummeting Lyrisius. Boethia appeared beside the fallen hero, praising him for ultimately destroying the army of Akavir. She turned him into a raven. Lyrisius quickly lost the worm in the clouds. Legend has it that the worm still lives, though this happened in the First Era long, long ago. The dragon nurses a grudge against Lyrisius and all of its kind. It has vowed never again to trust two-legged bearers of weapons. Scholar's note: if this legend has any basis in fact, the artifact Fearstruck was utterly destroyed. No other reference to it has ever been found. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the story of Lyrisius, and that is also the end of today's bonus episode, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.